Let me explain why we don't actually need discipline to achieve our goals. First, we need to understand how our mind works. What I'm about to share with you is something you've probably never heard before. I personally discovered this concept in a book that inspired this video. I'll share the title at the end. We need to think of our mind as a capricious 3-year-old child. Imagine your mind as this demanding toddler who wants everything immediately, doesn't want to wait for rewards or satisfaction, and only craves immediate gratification. This child wants to be distracted, have fun, play video games, essentially do all the things that typically distract us from our goals. This is our mind. And imagine that we share our body with this 3-year-old entity that wants everything right away, is impatient and undisciplined. Here's where we start to understand why we don't need discipline. It's our mind that needs discipline, not us. The fundamental concept to understand is that we are not our mind. What does this mean? During the day, all the thoughts our mind sends us, like wanting to get distracted while working, going to the kitchen, playing video games, smoking a cigarette, etc., these thoughts don't come from us. They come from our mind, which is a separate entity. Once we understand this, we're halfway to being able to ignore what our mind tells us. The secret is to stop identifying with our mind and these thoughts. Instead of believing these thoughts are our own and therefore acting on them, we need to see them as coming from a separate entity. The secret is to learn to observe these thoughts as if they were coming from an external entity. Here's exactly what I do, even now, after knowing this concept for a long time. When my mind sends me distracting thoughts while I'm working, like checking Instagram, playing games, eating something, I imagine myself in third person in a completely dark environment. I see myself standing with my back turned, and in front of me is this entity, this crouched, crying child who's complaining because they want to play video games or get distracted. What do? I laugh at this child. I laugh because it's simply a whiny child complaining because it wants to be distracted and doesn't want to do what we know is important. I'm the responsible adult, so I laugh at it, accept the thought it sends me, and move on. This technique helps us accept, not ignore, but accept all the thoughts our mind sends us and continue on the right path. It's about living in the present. We become observers of our mind rather than being overwhelmed by it. We no longer identify with the thoughts our mind sends, but become external observers. When the mind sends a thought like, get distracted, we just chuckle, shrug it off, and continue working. It's the mind that needs discipline because it's the capricious child. We, as adults who know what we need to do, don't need discipline. If we learn not to identify with our mind, but observe these thoughts from the outside, we no longer need discipline. Why? Because whatever thought comes to us, we don't have to force ourselves to resist it. We simply accept it. My mind is now telling me to get distracted, to watch Netflix, to do something else. Fine, I accept it. I imagine this capricious child complaining and crying, expressing this desire. I want to watch Netflix. I accept it and ignore it. I have a little laugh. Here I am needing to focus on my goal, and it wants me to watch Netflix, and I move on. This concept, as simple or even trivial as it may seem, can change your life. It's not at all easy because you have to become an observer of your own thoughts, an observer of this entity that lives in your body. This doesn't just apply to discipline in terms of, I need to do this and I do it without getting distracted. It also applies fundamentally to your emotional sphere. Every time you feel a negative emotion like anxiety or fear of the future, for example, when you want to start an activity but don't because you're afraid of all the activities you'll have to do afterwards, you should do the same thing. Accept these thoughts and fears your mind sends you, stay focused on the present, and simply laugh at all these fears. These thoughts aren't you. They belong to this 3-year-old child living in your head. Accept them, have a little laugh, and move on. If you apply this technique, you'll become unstoppable. When any thought comes, you realize this thought isn't mine, it comes from it. You accept it and you don't allow this thought to control you. Even when this thought sends you negative emotions, which are simply thoughts expressed as bodily sensations, if you learn to observe this bodily sensation and the thoughts your mind sends you, you'll become immune to these thoughts. Stay focused on the present, on the only thing you need to do right now. Ask yourself, what's the next thing I need to do immediately? What's the next thing I need to do right now? Instead of thinking about all the things you'll have to do later, go one step at a time. Focus only on the next step and you'll reach any goal. Remember, you are not your mind. Your mind is this 3-year-old child living in your body, sharing your body with you. Through your body, it tries to satisfy its desires, needs, and wants. But when you don't identify with your mind and instead observe it in third person, accept it, and laugh at it, you don't allow your mind to use your body to get what it wants. Your mind wants to play video games. Don't allow it to use your body to play video games. It wants to eat at McDonald's. Don't allow it to use your body for that. Don't allow it to get you up from your chair instead of working on your computer. This is the secret. You are not your mind. Learn this concept, internalize it, apply this technique. It won't be easy at all to develop the habit of observing your thoughts at every moment of the day. It's really difficult, but once you've developed this habit, you'll be unstoppable. If you want to explore this concept further, the concept of observing the mind and living in the present, read the book Practicing the Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It's a fairly famous book, about 100 pages, you'll read it quickly. This is one of those books that, if applied, will change your life. Not that reading the book will change your life just like that. Nothing in life works that way. But if you apply what's in this book repeatedly, your life will make a switch. You'll realize how easy easy it becomes to achieve all your goals. Apply everything I've told you and let me know how it goes.